Hello learners, in the previous modules we completed Plato's political philosophy. Now we are going to start with Aristotle's theories of politics. Before we begin, I am Ranjit Kaur, Assistant Professor Political Science at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. What are we going to cover in this module? In this module, we will be discussing on the life history of Aristotle, conception of his state, evolution, characteristics and functions of state, followed by criticism and finally the conclusion. So let's begin. Aristotle was born in 384 BC at Stagira, which was near Macedonia coast. His father was a physician to the king of Macedonia. The culture and tradition of Macedonia was different from that of Athens. It was around 350 kilometers away from Greece, and the Macedonia was ruled by king. There was no democratic government like that of Athens. As his father was physician, Aristotle was born in the environment of medicine and he has knowledge of basic sciences. It was expected that he will be taking his father's profession. But the name and fame of Plato's academy and the desire to get best quality of education, Aristotle joined Plato's academy. He remained there till 20 years, till the death of Plato. And he wanted to become the head of the academy, but since he was an alien, he was not allowed to. He left Athens and he went to Asia Minor, where he opened the second branch of the academy. Later on, he was being called by the Macedonian king to be a tutor of the Alexander the Great. At that time, Aristotle opened up his own academy known as Lyceum. After the death of Alexander the Great, Aristotle was charged with impiety, and so he left that area and he died in 322 BC at Chalcis, where he remained. Aristotle has written a lot of theses. Some of the important works of Aristotle are logic, metaphysics, politics, linguistics. He is also known as father of political science and also the father of comparative politics, because he has attached all the methodology which are used in sciences subject to be in political science. Let us talk about Aristotle's theory of state. Aristotle's conception of state, which he has written in his book First of Politics, where he has highlighted important issues like origin, nature and development of state. What do Aristotle believe? He says that one who can live without state is either a beast or a god. Only because the beast and the god do not require state to live in, whereas a human being definitely requires union as well as state. So they are social animals and they cannot live in isolation. So that Aristotle claims man by nature is a political animal and the state is the result of his nature. Like other animals, human beings also believed in living together, and that is how state came into being. And finally, he says that state is the result of the development and possesses an intrinsic values. State, when we say is the result of development, he says that the result of development means it has evolved slowly and gradually. And both Aristotle and Plato wanted to make an ideal state, so something which is based on moral values. So finally, Aristotle quotes, state came into being for the existence of life and continued for the sake of good life. So the major reason why state was created was to provide life to the individuals where they can grow and develop. Later on, it resulted into a good life, a luxurious life, and that is where state remained continued. Talking about the evolution of the state, Aristotle, like his master Plato, rejects the idea of contract. He says state does not came into being by signing a contract as what sophists used to feel. He says state is the result of growth and development, and state is a natural institution. State has been originated to fulfill the basic needs of the people. The requirements, when we live, when we want to survive, we require certain things, and those are being fulfilled. For example, food, clothing and shelter are being fulfilled when you live within the state. State is an organism which grows naturally. That is what Aristotle feels. He compares a state with a human body or with an organism which has grown slowly and gradually, with a single cell to a multicellular organism. Here O.P. Gauba quotes that a state is just like a human being, like a hands and legs of a human body, which cannot exist if they are being imputed. Our hand is operating only when it is being attached to a body. So the concept of whole and part is being explained by Aristotle even. So in order to function properly, it should be attached to the whole, and the whole is the state, and individuals are the parts of the society or the state. He also further talks about it is a union of many elements such as man, institutions, family, village, etc. If we talk about the evolutionary theory, what does Aristotle says? That for fulfilling basic needs, first human beings came together. So man associated with man, that means human beings, men and the women reproduced and formed the family. Further, families joined together to form village, and village has joined together to form the state. So that is how it was a union of many elements. The evolution of organic, wherein each element is interrelated and interconnected to each other, and its development give rise to state. Like our heart, liver, lungs, all are interrelated to each other. All have different functions to perform, but any of the organ goes on strike, does not functions properly, definitely the whole body will get paralytic, or even the human body may not survive. Similarly, we have executive, legislature, judiciary, different functions which are being performed by these organs, but they all function when they are in state. Without state, they cannot function independently and perfectly. So finally, we can say that the origin of the state is based on evolutionary theory, which has been Aristotle's concept. Now let us talk about characteristics of Aristotelian state. Firstly, Aristotle says state is a natural institution. When we talk about natural institution, that means it has not been artificially designed or it has not been made by someone. It has grown slowly and gradually as a human body grows from single cell to multicellular organism with multiple organs. So it's a complex whole. Similarly, state is still growing and evolving. Secondly, he says state is a supreme association. Particularly, if we concentrate on this point, Aristotle says state is not just an association of association, but it is a supreme association. That means there are various socio-political, economical associations exist in a society or in a state. But when we talk about state, it is a supreme association because all these associations and institutions exist only there, they are within the state. Whereas, if they will work individually, they will have no existence. As he talked about that the first association is family. Okay, when an individual join together, they form a family. A family is formed. Finally, these families, they join together and they form village. And all these villages join together to form city, state or you could say even polis. Now, today's world, we could say that earlier, as in Athens, they were small states, and that is why they were known as city-states. Like Aristotle says, an ideal state should have a population of 10,000. So, you can imagine what is a city-state. But nowadays, we have a concept of nation-state where we have millions of people residing together. So, that means the state is growing, not individually, but technologically, politically, the institutions are growing. So, state practically is a supreme association of all these associations. These associations can exist and work only when they are within the state. They cannot work outside the state. Then Aristotle says that state is prior to individuals. That does not mean state came first, then the individuals. Chronologically speaking, individuals came first, and according to their needs and requirements, state came into being. But when we talk about prioritizing things, then definitely state is prior to individuals. That means first comes state. We work for the interest of the state, then of the individuals, and that is why state is prior. State is self-sufficient. Aristotle has quoted in somewhere that state is self-sufficient. That means self-sufficiency is lacking nothing. Everything you get within the state, nothing outside the state. So, state helps in overall development of an individual, its moral, intellectual development. You also has the rights to form your family, property, because unlike Plato, he believes that an individual should have his family as well as property. And education and everything you get when you reside in a state, and so the state is self-sufficient. In the Greek word, it has been said autarkic, that means lacking is nothing. State symbolizes unity in diversity. Aristotle also talked about unity. For unity, he asked his guardian class to give up some of its right. Aristotle believed if there are diverse elements present in a state or a society, we need to form unity in that state. So, he gave importance to unity. He also gave an example of a music where you could see that there are different instruments playing their different tones, but when they are coordinated together, when they are united, they produce a wonderful music or a tune which we love and like to listen. But if they are not coordinated, you can imagine what will be the sound. So, that is what he says, with different elements, unity is required. State is spiritual association in moral life. Both Plato and Aristotle wanted to create an ideal state, as Plato said that the state on the images of church. That means morality, ethics needs to be present in the life of the human beings as well as in the state. So, for that, the state should make efforts to create a life of a human being moral. And finally, constitution is the identity of the state. We will be dealing a complete topic on constitution, that how much importance he has given to the constitution. Why? Because Aristotle has compared 158 constitutions, and finally he came to the conclusion that if you want to know a particular state, you need to read its constitution. That is why he says constitution is the identity of the state. Let us talk about the functions of the state. What are the important functions according to Aristotle of state? Firstly, he says is to provide fuller and self-reliant life of its individuals. Now, when we talk about fuller and self-reliant, definitely an individual cannot fulfill all his needs and desires by his own. So, whose responsibility is this? It's the responsibility of the state to provide each and every facility to the state. So, that is where to let them grow to their fuller. Fuller is education, knowledge, money, everything which they get within state, and to make them self-sufficient. Secondly, he talks about creation of a good and joyful life. good life, a contented life, where the people could feel that they have earned what they want to, they gained what they want to. So that is where Aristotle wanted to give good and joyful life. Thirdly, he says to provide education to its citizens. We have seen Plato's theory of education, and we could say that Plato has highlighted a lot about education. But Aristotle, on the other hand, also stressed the importance of education in an individual's life. He says we will be able to frame our good constitution and make good citizens if proper education is imparted to them. And finally, is to ensure leisure for the citizens to establish a contented life. What is leisure? Holiday or a free time. What Aristotle feels is, if an individual is given free time, they can cultivate their virtues. If we are busy, we cannot cultivate our virtues, we cannot grow our hobbies. So if you want to learn music, if you want to learn dancing, if you want to grow yourself, you need to improve your virtues. What do you require is leisure, and that is what he says is the duty of the state, to give them free time. Now let us talk about criticism of his theory. None of the theory can be without criticism. Some of the thinkers believe that it gave rise to a totalitarian state. So it's a totalitarian by nature, because everything is within the state, nothing is outside the state. State is a complete whole, that is what he says, and all the individuals and various other organs are the part of it. And so state is prior to the whole, state is prior, and the individuals are secondary. So some of the people say that he has given unlimited powers, and that is why he is making a state as a totalitarian state. Secondly, the state or polis, association or community have no separate importance. According to Aristotle, he has used same word for say state as well as society. He says resulting in the formation of society or resulting in the formation of state. Whereas nowadays we say society is different and state is different. State consists of varieties of society within it. But for Aristotle, state and society was synonym, and that is why he is being criticized. Thirdly, it is untrue that the state is the greatest manifestation of supreme good. You cannot say that if you want to achieve good for your life, if you want to have a contented life, you can get only in the state. You cannot get beyond it. So people say it's not like that, that is the final authority or final place where you get everything as good. So that's the criticism of Aristotle's theory of state. In the end, we could say that Aristotle's views on the scope of state are definitely much wider than that of individualists, especially Green and Locke, who says that state has a very minimum role to play in the lives of the individuals, whereas Aristotle believed that the moral, physical, mental development of the individuals are all dependent on the state, and it's the duty of the state to provide all resources, materialistic or moral or spiritual resources, to its individuals. And finally, he was consistent in his saying or in his theory that better and fuller life. He wanted to give a well-contented life to his individuals. That's all about Aristotle's theory of state.